Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Mustafa and these are the headlines. Pakistan says the Afghan situation and unresolved disputes are the key challenges to peace and stability in Asia. Addressing the conference on Central and South Asian regional connectivity in Tashkent, Prime Minister Imran Khan said the huge potential of cooperation remains untapped because of these regional disputes. Khan said Islamabad's foremost priority is stability in Afghanistan as it directly affects Pakistan. In Pakistan, security forces have rescued 5 laborers in an intelligence-based operation in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The military's media wing says they were part of a group of 16 abducted by terrorists in Gulam district last month. It says 10 were released the next day, while 1 body was also recovered. In Western Europe, at least 120 people have died and hundreds more are unaccounted for after some of the worst flooding in decades. Record rainfall caused rivers to burst their banks, devastating the region. The death toll in Germany now stands at over 100, while 22 died in Belgium. Brazil has reported more than 1,500 COVID-19 deaths and over 50,000 infections in the past 24 hours. Pakistan has logged over 2,300 new infections and 31 new deaths overnight. Globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 188.8 million, while the death toll is over 4 million. Well, those were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. Pakistan says the Afghan situation and unresolved disputes are the key challenges to peace and stability in Asia. Prime Minister Imran Khan made these remarks while addressing the conference on Central and South Asian regional connectivity in Tashkent. More in this report.
Khan said the huge potential of cooperation remains untapped because of these regional disputes. He said Islamabad's foremost priority is stability in Afghanistan as it directly affects Pakistan. The Prime Minister expressed disappointment over the allegations against Pakistan from the Afghan side. He said to blame Pakistan for what is happening in Afghanistan is extremely unfair.
President Ashraf Ghani mentioned Pakistan's negative role in this conflict going on in Afghanistan. President Ghani, let me just say that the country that is going to be most affected by turmoil in Afghanistan is Pakistan. Pakistan suffered 70,000 people dead, 70,000 casualties in the last 15 years. The last thing Pakistan wants is more conflict. Our economy is finally recovering from one of the most difficult phases which we've been through. And I repeat, the last thing we want is turbulence in Afghanistan.
He said 3 million Afghan refugees have been living in Pakistan for decades. The Prime Minister, along with his delegation, later met Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on the sidelines of the conference. All this comes the day before Pakistan is due to host a 3-day Afghan peace conference.
For more on this, we are joined by Lieutenant General Gulam Mustafa, retired. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Mustafa, with the walls around Afghan government in Kabul closing in with every passing hour, is President Ashraf Ghani's practice of blaming Pakistan for the failures of Afghan defense forces a smart strategy that would pay off?
I think Ashraf Ghani is more or less redundant to the Afghan issue now. And it has been for quite some time. If you look at it, number one, when the talks started between the Americans and the Taliban in Doha, Afghan government was left out of it totally. And that would make a very clear signal that the Americans are not going to back up this system that they had placed in force. Then, more recently, you find that the kind of strategy adopted by Taliban and the very astute tactics have started paying off. And the pressure around Kabul and similarly other district headquarters is now increasing. With that, the Afghan forces, which had so-called been trained and equipped and prepared, they realized that fighting Taliban were part of them, and they also realized that the way Taliban have reached to these forces through their media campaigns and through well-organized dialogue system at the lower level, that is paying off. And the forces seem to be melting away. And then recently you find that Doha, again, beckoned Abdullah and Hamid Karzai. And Ashraf Ghani actually felt totally left out. So for him now, to say whatever he's saying, to me, frankly, is nothing more than kind of a porcupine striking back at whatever he thinks is his enemy. And he's trying to collect and corral all those elements which are anti-Pakistan within Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan. To that extent, that is, if you call it a strategy, but it's a poor tactics. With every passing day, those elements hostile to Pakistan, they also realize that without Pakistan, their survival, without Pakistan, peace in Afghanistan, and without Pakistan, further prosperity and development in Afghanistan is not possible. So therefore, I think this idea is now gaining hold, and Ashraf Ghani is more or less redundant. Whatever he might say will be a limited value, nothing more than that.
Right. General Mustafa, the United States and the UN have accused President Ashraf Ghani's government of corruption worth billions of dollars in Afghanistan. Do you believe Kabul government failed to deliver what was required for the people of Afghanistan?
I mean, to the extent that there'll be a lot of misappropriation and embezzling, whatever you might call it, and Americans and NATO forces were part of it. Let's not forget that. They also, I think, partied over whatever money was being spent in Afghanistan. Second, importantly, the rate of the Khan government was very limited. For them to adopt long-term development measures wasn't possible. They were not interested. They were more interested in buying people off to be able to get to a position of strength when ultimately Americans leave. But before that could happen, they are now been caught, with a hand and till. And to that extent, yes, Afghan people definitely have a grudge against money which has been taken on their name and wasted.
Mr. Mustafa, the Afghan ambassador in India, said Kabul could call in help of Indian troops to Afghanistan to help fight the Taliban. How do you see this in the greater regional security perspective?
That India is interested to be in Afghanistan because, if you recall historically, Afghanistan has been used against Pakistan right from the day Pakistan came into being. It has actively attacked Pakistan physically, not once but twice or thrice. And they have been propagating against Pakistan in different garbs, whether it be Pakistan or Durrani line. And India has always been there. And it was there, and they thought that they have been able to develop, they bribed Afghanistan through $3 billion of so-called investment. That's more of a bribe to find a place in that country so that Pakistan could be attacked. So India would love that. But getting their boots on ground, I wish they do that. That will be the really end of Indian armed forces. Indians know that. Everybody else knows that. And if Ashraf Ghani is having that kind of ideas in his mind, I wish they come true, because Indians will be extremely stupid to get themselves involved with boots on ground with the Americans and NATO forces, tried with the top of their technology to do that in 21 years. They couldn't do that. And now when Taliban have occupied all spaces around the major cities and choked their responses and forcing them onto a political solution, and political solution now appears to be evolving, or it may take a bit of time, but you are heading towards that. So India is feeling left out. I think it's the worst sufferer from all this fiasco in Afghanistan is India, because all this investment seems to be going waste. If they put their boot on ground with Pakistan on one side, China on the other side, well, it's a very, very mouth-watering prospect, certainly.
Lieutenant General retired Gulam Mustafa, thank you for speaking to Indus News. And now we're moving on. Pakistan says it will continue to play its reconciliatory role for peace in Afghanistan. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi held a meeting with U.S. envoy to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, on the sidelines of the South Asian Conference in Tashkent. Qureshi said Afghans have to decide the future of their country. He said peace in Kabul is essential for the promotion of regional connectivity and economic development. Islamabad has rejected Kabul's allegations that the Pakistan Air Force threatened its Afghan counterpart to support the Taliban. In a statement, the Foreign Office said Pakistan's Air Force never communicated with the Afghan Air Force. The Foreign Office said such statements undermine Islamabad's sincere efforts for the Afghan peace process. It said Pakistan acknowledges the Afghan government's right to undertake actions on its sovereign territory. The statement added that Islamabad took necessary measures within its territory to safeguard its troops and population. The Taliban have also rejected Kabul's claims, saying the Afghans can protect the Spin Bulldog border crossing. Earlier, Vice President Amrullah Saleh said Pakistan's Air Force warned Afghan forces against dislodging the Taliban from the area. He also accused Pakistan of providing close air support to the Afghan Taliban in certain areas. Pakistan has postponed the Afghan peace conference scheduled to be held in Islamabad this weekend. In a statement, the Foreign Office said new dates for the conference will be announced after the Eid al-Adha. The statement did not elaborate on the reason for the postponement. Afghanistan's political leadership was invited to the conference in a bid to give a fresh impetus to the peace process. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the ideology of the RSS has become the impediment to peaceful coexistence with India. He was responding to a question by an Indian journalist.
Communicated to India that we have been waiting for so long to exist together in a civilized manner. But what can we do when this RSS's ideology has come in the way?
लेकिन करें क्या, एक RSS की ideology रास्ते में आ गई है.
Indian forces have martyred 2 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The Kashmir youths were targeted during an operation in Srinagar's Dinmar area. Occupation forces have imposed a complete communications blackout in the area. The troops have carried out hundreds of extrajudicial murders during their so-called cordon and search operations. Rights group says Indian forces have martyred at least 400 Kashmiris since August 2019. In Pakistan, security forces have rescued 5 laborers in an intelligence-based operation in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The military's media wing says they were part of a group of 16 abducted by terrorists in Gulam district last month. It says 10 were released the next day, while 1 body was also recovered. On Tuesday, 2 soldiers were martyred in an exchange of fire with terrorists. But security forces continue the pursuit of the terrorists. The media wing said the army is working hard to ensure the security of innocent civilians. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Beijing and Moscow should jointly combat the stigmatization of the COVID-19 pandemic. Wang made these remarks during a meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Wang said the 2 countries should work together to oppose the politicization of virus origin tracking. Meanwhile, Lavrov wrote an article on the 20th anniversary of Russia and China's Treaty on Good Neighborliness. He said the military cooperation between the 2 is not against any third state. Lavrov said Russia and China do not accept the policy of regime changes, double standards, and unilateral sanctions. The United States and Germany have failed to settle a dispute over Russia's Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. U.S. President Joe Biden and German Chancellor Angela Merkel met at the White House in Washington. In a briefing, they agreed that Moscow must not be allowed to use energy as a weapon to coerce its neighbors. Merkel said Russia could face EU sanctions if it violated its agreement to continue shipping gas through Ukraine. Biden said both leaders agreed to continue to support the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. They also agreed to collaborate to accelerate moves to tackle the climate crisis in emerging economies. The death toll from floods in eastern Germany has risen to 100. Authorities say more than 1,000 people are missing in the Neuenahr-Ahrweiler region. At least 22 have died in Belgium after record rainfall caused rivers to break their banks. Torrential rains have also troubled the Netherlands and France, prompting mass evacuations. Luxembourg has set up a crisis panel to respond to emergencies triggered by heavy rains. In Switzerland, Lake Lucerne reached the highest level 5 and will flood if the water rises just by 13 more centimeters. Forecasts suggest that more heavy rains are expected across much of the region today. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Brazil has reported more than 1,500 COVID-19 deaths and over 50,000 infections in the past 24 hours. Globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 188.8 million, while the death toll is over 4 million. More in this report.
While new waves of COVID-19 continue to emerge in several countries, governments make it clear easing restrictions is directly proportional to vaccines. Canada says it may permit fully vaccinated travelers into the country by early September if the current trend in vaccination rate and public health conditions continue. Over in Europe, England is removing most restrictions from the 19th of July, saying a rapid rollout of vaccines has largely broken the link between infections and serious illness or death. But the United Kingdom's chief medical officer says people should approach the end of curbs with caution. Spain's Barcelona is to impose a night curfew again amid rising cases. Spain's 14-day infection rate has surpassed 500 per 100,000 people for the first time since mid-February. The situation continues to worsen elsewhere too. The World Health Organization says Africa recorded a 40% rise in deaths this week.
As this surge sweeps across Africa, we're witnessing the brutal cost in lives lost. Deaths have climbed steeply for the past 5 weeks, jumping 40% in the past week. This is a clear warning. Our hospitals are at a breaking point. In all, 153,000 people have sadly died.
South Korea says tighter limits on private gatherings may be needed as treatment centers fill up, prompting calls for more people to be allowed to receive care at home. Thailand has reported a daily record of 9,692 cases as authorities struggle to tackle the country's biggest wave of infections so far. The Philippines has detected its first locally acquired case of the more infectious Delta variant. Indonesia is struggling to cope with a devastating wave driven by the Delta strain, which has left hospitals overflowing. Many infected people are unable to get a hospital bed and simply die at home. In such times, about 35 volunteers in Bogor, south of Jakarta, recover the bodies of people that have died from COVID-19 while isolating at home.
On the first day, we only received a call for one death, maybe because the hotline number was not widely known then. On the second day, there were 3 deaths, but today, nearly a week after the group was formed, there are 7. So the condition is gradually worsening. The condition in Bogor city is worrying.
The Delta variant has picked up pace in Australia, and officials have urged people to obey lockdown measures that cover around 40% of the country's population. Meanwhile, Abu Dhabi has announced a partial lockdown and new entry requirements in the Emirates starting 19th of July. Saudi Arabia has arrested more than 120 people suspected of supplying or procuring fraudulent vaccine and test certificates 2 days before a tightly controlled Hajj amid some of the strictest rules in the world.
Pakistan has reported 31 deaths from COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide tally of fatalities has reached 22,720. The ministry says the virus infected more than 2,300 people overnight. It says there are over 4,300 active cases and nearly 2,400 of them are critical. The country's caseload is approaching 984,000. More than 917,000 people have recovered from the disease so far. In India, at least 4 people have died after falling into a well in central Madhya Pradesh state's Vidisha district. Locals say some 40 villagers fell into the well while attempting to rescue a child. Eyewitnesses said the collective weight of the people led to the collapsing of the well. Officials say 20 people have been rescued while some 16 remain missing. They say a search and rescue operation is underway. Turkey says it has killed 7 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in the Tel Rifat region in northern Syria. The Defense Ministry said the militants attacked Turkish base within the Operation Euphrates Shield Zone. They said 3 of the neutralized terrorists were from the group's main base in Mount Kandil in northern Iraq. The ministry added the other 4 terrorists were neutralized in strikes on their positions in Sheikh Isa and Ain Dagna. Ankara holds the fighter group responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. U.S. authorities are struggling to suppress a huge wildfire that displaced roughly 2,000 residents in southern Oregon. It is the largest among dozens of blazes raging across the drought-stricken western United States.
The boot-like fire has now charred more than 227,000 acres of desecrated timber and brush. More than 1,700 personnel, aided by 12 helicopters, increased containment lines to 7% from 5%. However, Incident Commander Joe Hessel says the blaze will continue to expand. No serious injuries have been linked to the boot-like fire. Officials say it has destroyed at least 21 homes and 54 other structures. Nearly 2,000 homes are threatened. The boot-like fire ranks easily as the largest of at least 10 active wildfires burning across the Pacific Northwest. According to state figures, it is the 7th largest on record in Oregon since 1900.
In Canada, an Indigenous nation has called on the government to release residential school attendance records to help identify unmarked graves. The Indus Specialist presented the full report on the discovery of 215 unmarked graves near the Kamloops Indian Residential School. The nation said they expect more graves to be found as the search continues. The ground surveying teams have identified potential grave sites after searching 2 acres near the school. More than 160 acres still require investigations. Chief Razan Kasmir said the finding prompted fresh commitments from the First Nation to continue work at the site.
I look forward to a fulsome conversation where we can finalize the details of the federal government providing the needed supports as well as access to our student records, and also to continue to shed light on our missing children that are buried in our care.
Kamloops Residential School in British Columbia was the largest in the country. Opened under a Roman Catholic administration in 1890, the school had as many as 500 students until its closure in 1978. And now moving on. In Britain, the inventor of a jet suit that lets its wearer fly like Iron Man has unveiled his newest electric-powered suit. More on this report.
Richard Browning, founder of Gravity Industries, says switching from jet fuel to an electric-powered suit will push the limits of what is possible. He says the suit has enough power to run a number of houses.
Suit has enough power to run a small street of houses. It is phenomenal how much energy you need in a small form factor to get a human off the ground, and it really just brings home how much energy you have in gasoline or diesel or those fuels. So we're getting there. It'll only ever get better.
It has previously been tested by the paramedics in England's remote regions to get them to people in distress faster. The company has also demonstrated its suits to the Royal Marines to test how they can assist in maritime boarding operations.
Yeah, so military and search and rescue, I mean, they are new applications, but no, they're very real. We've done enough exercises with both of those groups now in a variety of countries to prove that there's actually a really powerful role for the equipment. So yeah, watch this space.
Gravity Industries was launched in March 2017 with founder Browning demonstrating his jet suit all over the world. The suit can hit speeds of over 128 kilometers per hour and is capable of reaching an altitude of 12,000 feet.
Shares in the Asia-Pacific markets are trading mixed as investors tread cautiously amid an alarming rise in COVID-19 cases. Japan's Nikkei 225 has dipped close to 1%, with shares in mainland China shedding over 0.5%. Seoul's Kospi has also dropped marginally. Meanwhile, Hong Kong's Hang Seng has gained nearly 0.5%. Australia's ASX 200 is trading flat. For weather updates, we have Nala Shuja with us.
Thank you. We're going to start with Abu Dhabi, where it is expected to get extremely hot with temperatures rising to 43 degrees Celsius. While in Amsterdam, the weather is pleasantly cloudy with temperatures at 22 degrees Celsius. If we head to Ankara, the weather is mostly sunny with temperatures at 35 degrees Celsius. Now moving to under Auckland, the clouds will get in the way of the sun, but the temperature is chilly at 17 degrees Celsius. Now, if you are traveling to Bangkok, the clouds will be overhead. Temperatures there will be around 33 degrees Celsius. While in Beijing, there are going to be clouds in the forecast with temperatures at 30 degrees Celsius. While in Beirut will experience mostly sunny weather with temperatures at 31 degrees Celsius. Berliners will experience a bit of cloudy weather with temperatures at 28 degrees Celsius. Now heading to Cairo, the hot sun will be excruciating with 39 degrees Celsius as the temperature. Down in Canberra, the winter rain is keeping things chilly at 10 degrees Celsius. In Islamabad, the sun is out with temperatures rising to 36 degrees Celsius. While in Jakarta, the temperatures are steady at 33 degrees Celsius with some partial sun. That's all for now. Back to you.
Thank you, Naila. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.